Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gavinski's Tutorials. Today I'm going to do a walkthrough and review of B00GA by Hainbach and Audiothing. So this is a plugin for desktop and iOS, and basically a funky little rhythm generator with pulse and noise sounds, some effects as well, but it can get into tonal territory too. So if we play around with the rate on free rate, we can really speed up the triggering and get into some kind of dirty oscillator territory. It's really fun, this app. I've been super enjoying it. So I'll walk you through all the main controls and point out a few things that I think that people might miss when they first look at this. If they don't go through the manual in detail, there were a couple of things I missed, and I was really surprised to learn, oh wow, I can actually do that. Especially some stuff related to MIDI that I wasn't expecting. So I'll also click through a few different presets here as well at the beginning of the video, just to give you an idea of the flavor of things as I walk through the UI. So here we have two sequencers, okay? One on the top, one on the bottom. If a switch is down here, it means it's off. That means it's not producing any sound on that step. If a switch is here, it's on, right? Now, we have various things over here. I can, for example, just clear both of those sequences, and you can see now all the switches are down, so they're all off. We can also change the length of the sequence here. We can do things like randomize. So here on random cycle, the switches will assume random positions every time a cycle finishes. So after 5 steps in this case. So here we're just hearing the pulse generator. So top row is for the pulses, bottom row for noises. So, right, so now I've turned on step 1 and step 3, and the other steps are off. We got more controls here. So here, it'll randomize the positions every time I press the random button. So it won't re-randomize at the end of every cycle like this button will. We've also got invert, turn off to on and on to off, and clear, as we just saw. Over here, we have various patterns that we can load. So the switch here is above 1. That means we're listening to pattern 1 now, and any edits we make here affect pattern 1. Any edits in the sequencer here. If I drag that switch over here, now we can adjust pattern 2. There are also copy and paste buttons, so you can copy the switch positions of one pattern into another. Really easy. For example, I press this, I've now copied pattern 2, and if I drag the slider over and press paste, now I've copied that pattern 2's pattern in here into pattern 3. All right. So here we have a few controls related to triggering. If this is set to host, you'll need to make sure that your host transport is on, otherwise it won't work. Otherwise, you can just ignore that and have it set to free. In that case, even if your host transport's off, it'll still run, just like it's doing here. Some of the presets are saved in a way that they need the host trigger. So when you're testing this out on your DAW or your host app, like I'm using AUM here on my iPad, then it's better to have your transport running so you don't run into problems when you try and load those ones. Here we just got a little pendulum. So it's running back and forth. Change this preset. So here, the rate, synced and unsynced. So the synced version doesn't go that fast. If you want this dirty oscillator kind of stuff, you're going to have to use the unsynced mode. We can trigger things like that rate with MIDI note pitches. I'll show you that later. So over here in the pulse section, now if you see here, we're only actually listening to pulse. I've turned the volume of the noise section down. So here I've got a bank loaded, C, vocals and instrument samples. This is a bank I made. I'll put my presets for this on my Patreon, by the way. Here I basically just used Koala and I loaded a few different instruments in the audio slot here and I recorded some different samples into Koala. I made a bank, exported from Koala, right? Using the export function. Export all samples, edited samples, right? Because first I normalized them and cleaned them up and stuff. And then in B00GA, I just went into the settings up here. There's a bug that means that this is appearing on the top left. It should be appearing over here. That happens at some sizes. That's a juice bug, apparently. It's nothing Audiothing can do anything about, unfortunately. And then I just imported the zip file that I created, and then I had a new bank in here. So I can use this crossfade knob to crossfade between those samples, those 8 samples that I put in. There are actually only 4 samples that I made, but I made copies of them, so I had 8. I did that so I wouldn't have any spaces, because banks here need 8 samples. So I can, tweak this manually, but I can also press this random button, and that will act like a random LFO, and the rate will be related to the rate over here. So here you can hear, I've got a string sample. I used a Vina and a vocal synth and a real human vocal sample, all at C. I could have recorded those in at different pitches as well. Here, for example, this preset, I made a bank with 8 different kalimba samples put through a bit crusher, and each one was a different note of a C major scale. So now I've turned random off, so you see we're hearing the same sample and it's the same note. And so now it's fading between those different notes. So it's pretty fun, this. So it comes with a lot of banks built in. And again, use the X-fade knob to crossfade between them. If we tap here, we can audition any sound. We can import sounds one by one if we want. I prefer to use the import bank method. It's faster, clear, and various save and all those kind of functions. This is one of the examples running through the octave filter. That's basically a slightly slimmed down version of Audiothing's dub filter app. It pairs really nicely with this. One thing I just want to mention, if you see here, when I've got user presets, the next preset here is called Drippy Spring, but if I try to use the arrow, it doesn't go to the next preset like it should. Instead, it goes back to the first preset in the first factory bank. That's really annoying. I hope that can be fixed. It's probably not happening on desktop, but it's happening to me on iOS, and it really annoys the heck out of me. So then we've got this noise section. So I bring down the pulse section. So remember, the noise section is being triggered here, right? So, go in and play around with which switches are on and which are off to get a rhythm that you like, or just use the randomize buttons. And here, setting the volume for the noise section. Here, the internal noise generator's clock. So that'll change the density and pitch of the noise. That can be randomized. And this legato, I got a simple little thing which is quite handy for demoing that here. So if you look here, we're only hearing the noise, I think. Or are we hearing the pulse? So here, if you see, when it plays these 3 steps, it's playing right? So every time, even though we've got successive steps, the envelope is being re-triggered. If I press legato, instead it will slur all those together and you'll get this sustained burst of noise. So that's good for more like cymbal sounds. So let's just hear the noise here. So there's a lot of variety you can get with the tone knob and the attack and decay and envelope shaping feature. And so you can get really micro glitchy stuff. Super nice. And really nice to put that through the octave filter. Let's just flick through a few presets. I actually made a list of my factory favorites, but it's just not working properly because of this preset arrows bug. Let's say I select this one and the next preset is backbeat. If I try and use the arrows, it's just not going to it. It's going back to the first one in the bank. Such a pity. So I love these kind of sounds. But now look, it can get into, weird stuff like drones and things. So if we go to the factory bank, there's actually a bank called MIDI oscillations. So let's see that. So here I've got the AUM keyboard, and I can't remember what it's like in the default. I think in the default it's not set up for MIDI. You need to set all that up yourself. So if you tap here and you get this menu, which, as I say, should be appearing over here, but unfortunately it's over here at this size of the app sizing anyway. So here, if you see, I've set it so that MIDI is controlling rate, pulse pitch, noise clock, and start. That's a bit intense. We don't necessarily need to have all of those, but I'll just show you for demonstration purposes. So what that's doing is a few things, right? Every time I play a note, that will basically gate things. So on and off as soon as I take my finger away. But it's also controlling the rate knob here and the pitch knob here in the pulse section and the clock knob here in the noise section. So if you look at those knobs, like let's just look at the rate knob, for example. If I play a lower note, say down here, you can see the position of the rate knob. If I play up here, you see that's increasing. Now it's up higher, and so on. So it's doing that to the rate, the pitch, and the clock. You might not want all those things, so you can go in and toggle them off. The annoying thing is that, I don't know if it acts like this in the desktop version, but on the iPad version it does. I might want to toggle all of these off at once, but I can't actually do that because this closes every time you tap on something. So then I have to go through and tap again and, do this. And I have to do that 4 times if I want to turn all of those off. It's very annoying, so I hope that behavior gets changed. Another thing, oh yeah. Hang on, let me just go through a few of those MIDI oscillations presets first. So you see here, this one, we're not getting many of the changes that we were before, and I think it'll be more interesting with some of those. So let's see, for example, MIDI to rate. Let's get that added in. Right, so you see now, we can actually play it. And definitely sounds quite daft punky. One problem about these MIDI things being global is that I've no idea. Whoever created those factory presets, probably Hainbach, I'm guessing, I've no idea which MIDI things he wanted to be attached to those presets. I kind of wish that those were performance controls on the main screen and saved with each preset. Maybe, I don't know, there's downside to that as well. It can be handy to have them global. So the effects, pretty simple, but one thing you need to remember is you can move those around. The forward and backwards buttons for presets work okay with the factory banks. It's only once you get into user presets that it's problematic. And again, I'm guessing that's just an iOS problem. I'd be surprised if the desktop version has that. Either way, I hope it gets fixed. So, one thing I want to mention, the randomizer here. So great there's a randomizer, great that we have the Audiothing locking feature. So let's say I don't want the bank to change, I just press the lock button, go in here and lock the bank. And now I can randomize and it will keep that bank there, right? It's a pity there's no undo and redo. I always think anything that has a randomizer benefits from undo and redo. And even just for tweaking things and making presets and stuff, there were a few times in this app when I found myself wishing that it had undo and redo. See these experimental ones? A lot of these will be the sort of drony type things. Oh, hang on, I've got this bank locked still. Wait a second. So pretty nice for drone and sound effects, not just for rhythmic stuff. Another thing I'll mention about settings, if you go to global settings, you've got a little thing here, pulse fadeout. If you keep that on, it'll prevent any kind of clicking behavior So if we see here, for example, here this sound might be longer than, well, it is longer than the duration of a step. So if we turn pulse fade out off, you can hear that clicking there, which you might want, right? You might want that. Or you might not. So if you don't want it, just make sure pulse fade out's on. I've also got stuff in the settings here for importing and exporting user presets, importing banks. So remember, the bank is the samples, exporting banks, and a few other things. So lovely little app. I'm not someone who's really into conventional drums, but I absolutely love weird, clicky, glitchy stuff like this. So nice job. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. And massive thanks to everyone supporting me on Patreon. If you're a fan of the channel, please join them. Another way to help is using the plugin boutique link you'll find in my videos or any other links. Look in the pinned comments and use that if you're buying desktop plugins. It's a great low effort way to support this channel. Thanks, everyone. See you later. Have a great day.